Transferable skills. This episode of Transferable Skills is sponsored by the law firm of Fagan, Davis. Check the description for more details. I'm super excited to have our next guest here today for this episode, Jordan Dietch. And I know Jordan as a product manager. I'm very excited to now be able to share Jordan with you, our audience. Jordan, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Most people begin thinking about the career path they want to have, what they want to do when they quote unquote grow up. Tell me, in high school, what were your thoughts? Did you know what you wanted to get into then?
I don't know if I specifically knew what I wanted, but I was an ambitious kid in high school. My career path was a bit atypical. When most kids in high school were getting their first jobs as, like, I don't know, working in an ice cream shop, scooping ice cream, or they might have had their newspaper route.
Camp counselor.
Yeah, that's like the classics. I started working in my dad's best friend's bail bonds office when I was 16, doing doing data entry and shuffling papers around.
How did you land that gig? I mean, obviously, it's a friend of your dad's, but did he have an opening and approach you and say, you want to do something?
My dad and his best friend were very close. They grew up together. Even though my dad was in a completely different line of business, this was the closest thing that I had, what you would consider a family business. So my dad was in aerospace engineering. He would drive down to LA for work. I grew up in Oxnard, California, which is about 60 miles north of Los Angeles. And so during the summers, I would drive down there with them and spend Monday through Thursday working, doing, whatever they needed me to do to help out.
Posting bail.
Not quite posting bail at the age of 16, but I think if I could talk more about it later on, but fast forward to like 18 is when I did eventually get licensed and bonded and started doing the real bail bondsman stuff. Yeah.
That's a really weird job for the summer for a kid. How long did you do that?
I worked in bail from the age of 16 to 23.
You obviously kept coming back over those 5 years. And what was it about that job that you enjoyed outside of just earning a paycheck for the summer?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I would say at that age, it was probably the stories that you got to be around, I don't know, like the suspense of the job.
Yeah.
How interesting it was, and the people that you're interacting with on a day-to-day basis was pretty fascinating.
Was that mostly from your quote unquote clientele, or was it from your employer, your father's best friend? Was he telling you stories of the job of years past?
I would say it's all of the above. So to give you some backstory on who this guy is, my dad's best friend was he's a bail bondsman from LA, but more specifically from the Westwood, Beverly Hills area. So typically his clients are not what, the ordinary bail bondsman that you're maybe thinking about was bailing out of a jail, just run of the mill people doing, being charged with crimes, going to jail, and then wanting to get bailed out. His like bread and butter was bailing out movie stars, high profile people.
Yeah. Getting caught in an unfortunate moment.
That is part of what fascinated me, is he had so many stories, and we would sit around and, talk about those. I would say, yeah, the clients were interesting. Lawyers were interesting to talk to. It was all of the above that made it a pretty fascinating thing to be doing when you're, at a pretty young age.
I'm sure. And I'm sure in turn, you had over those years developed your own stories that you've shared over the years about your experience that are very rich and exciting and helped color who you are.
Oh, for sure. Yes, definitely. I reflect back on that period of my life a lot. Yeah, and make use of a lot of the skills that I learned during that time frame too.
What parts do you remember most as being most impressionable?
It's definitely not going to be your ordinary 9 to 5 stuff. Yeah, I would say I gained a good amount of, just general purpose skills during that time frame that maybe your not really gaining as a 16 to 23-year-old. So I came certainly well equipped into my mid 20s, having like a pretty foundational set of skills. I think the things that I remember most from that period of time is is just really like some of the more fascinating moments about like who, like the types of clients we were working with, and navigating those different clients, and just like the fascinating stories that we can get into if you want to.
I would love to.
I remember bailing like an old washed up 80s rock star one time, and I posted a bond, and I had to drive this person home to their house in the Hollywood Hills. It just made such an impression on me that the full experience, there's just so many of these experiences that I'll like never forget to this day.
The proverbial walk of shame, driving someone home after an incident and being locked up. I imagine it was probably exactly like the movie Jackie Brown.
Yeah, I think fascinating enough, I feel like Jackie Brown is a little bit based on, as you can imagine, on my boss's history,
Yeah.
because he was pretty embedded in the whole Hollywood scene for sure.
I'm sure he was very well known.
Oh, very well known, yeah.
People that help you in one way or another during the most difficult moments are probably very equally as impressionable to those people and the people involved. He must have his own folklore within Hollywood.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say if I were to sort of draw on what some of the important skills I learned during that time frame, as you're mentioning, these are people like, I don't think anybody sets out to do crime or commit a crime, and we're all innocent until proven guilty, and that's the whole reason why bail exists, is that you can be set free, and a bail bondsman can sort of act as your insurance to make sure that you show up to court, so that you could get a fair trial, right? And so, to your point, an important part of being a good bail bondsman is having a level of empathy and understanding for the people that you're working with, and making sure that you are understanding of their situation as they're going through a fairly difficult time, or their family's going through a very difficult time. And I think that carries forward into what I do now in product management. I think you really, really need to understand the most acute problems and the pain points of your customer in order to actually deliver a good product that they love and that improves their lives, and makes the things that they're trying to do easier.
Empathy is a common theme and skill that I think is very applicable in many roles.
Oh, for sure. While that period of my time may be clouded with the delusions or the allure of you're bailing out rock stars and rappers, um, there's still a lot of transferable skills that I've taken from that period of my time and carried them forward even 15 years down the road, as I've set off on a completely different career path in product management.
Tell me about some of the skills that you were using. You talk about empathy as being a hallmark
Mhm.
that has carried over, understanding now into product, the needs. What other skills did you learn, acquire, and develop as a bail bondsman that you feel have served you very well within product?
I would say another foundational part of being a bail bondsman is risk management. I think that goes without saying, as you can probably imagine.
Help me understand what you mean by how do you define risk and what kind of risk are we talking about?
Just because someone calls you doesn't mean that you should bail them out of jail, right?
Tell me more.
So you have to do pretty rigorous amount of analytics about a person to get a gauge on whether or not you actually should post bond for them. And not all of the time are you going to have some sort of quantitative inputs to be able to assess, whether you should be posting bond or not. Typically speaking, it's going to be some sort of qualitative research on that person, some gut feel, talking to their family, talking to their friends on whether or not you should take that risk to actually post bond for them, understanding what their past history is in terms of whether you feel comfortable or not ensuring that they're going to show up to court every time that they're supposed to, because it's a very expensive endeavor if they skip bail or flee the country um, or do any of the things that you wouldn't want them to do.
Take me through the steps and the timeline, because I think I have impressions of what a bail bondsman does, but I don't think I actually know the minute or hour to hour of it. So how do you know that someone needs you to post bond? Are they reaching out to you? Is the police department, is an attorney, is how do you know this? And then what steps are you taking in order to do that assessment? And how much time has passed until if you decide to post bail, how much time has passed until that happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, I haven't done this for 15 years, so certainly it's changed. I think rules have changed in different states, and for a long time, you know, I paid attention, but it has been some time. But just to give you sort of the rundown, you're arrested at some point, and taken to jail. That phone call that you get, you can either use it to call a bail bondsman, or you can call a family member that's going to then speak on your behalf. If you're doing things correctly, likely you're calling a family member, and then they're going to figure out like a bail bondsman to call, all assuming that you're eligible to be bailed out of jail. So likely your case is going to go before a judge who is even going to, you know, issue whether or not you can be bailed out of jail,
And then set the bail amount.
and then sets the bail amount.
And that typically happens shortly after someone has been arrested or time has passed.
It depends, I think, really on what time of day that you get put into jail.
So you're saying if it's best to get arrested earlier in the day so you don't have to
I
wait
think
overnight.
so. Yes.
That's a pro tip right there, people.
Yes. And trust me, you don't want to go to jail. Nobody wants to go to jail.
That's pro tip number 2.
Pro tip is don't go to jail. So your bond amount set, you're going to get your phone call. You're going to get family members calling into the bondsman. The bondsman might be asleep. So I would say another like fascinating thing that I observed in terms of work ethic when I was in this period of my life was how hard my bosses worked, and like how compassionate they were for humanity, really. Like they would get up at any hour of the day to take a phone call to help somebody out. And, just to see something like that, like from the age of 16 to 23, like is going to build a foundation of how hard you're supposed to work for yourself, for other people, that I definitely draw from at this point in my life.
I imagine that the responsibility, you bear a very heavy weight, knowing that at any point, should you choose to ignore an incoming phone call,
Yes.
that choice, that decision may result in a worse outcome for the person who is calling you and trying to reach you. And there's got to be some universal principles that are agreed upon for people in this line of work, that they have to figure out how to have that empathy, how to be responsible, responsive, and helpful without burning out, without taking it too personally to where it actually becomes detrimental to your mental health or your physical health.
I think there's a lot of those like mental health, physical health aspects in this line of business that are certainly ignored.
Yeah.
At the expense of yourself, but for the benefit of other people. It is a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week line of business, which isn't for everyone. So I certainly could have gone down that path and continued in that line of work. It wasn't for me. It wasn't like, I don't think it was my chosen path for some of those reasons, but I think I was just drawn to solving different problems in life.
Yeah, totally. And I imagine, like, as we've already heard, the skills that you have gained in that job and that experience have carried over throughout the following 15 years in your career. Now you've hit on another one, which is problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a life skill let alone professional skill. That is a life skill, being able to acknowledge that there's a problem, recognize it, and then how to resolve it either by yourself or at least get to the point where you can get to an eventual resolution in one way or another. Hey, did you know that an estimated 75% of Americans don't have an estate plan? Well, that's not exactly true. For instance, in Illinois, if you kick the bucket without at least a will, or if you become medically incapacitated, the courts will take the wheel and make decisions for you, whether you like it or not. It's like handing your life's biggest choices to a stranger at a bus stop. Don't let this happen to you. Call or text the law firm of Fagan, Fagan, Davis at 847-635-8200 to schedule your peace of mind planning session now. Mention the Transferable Skills podcast, and if you live in Illinois, that peace of mind planning session is free. That's a $495 value for the low price of $0. And if you're not in Illinois, but still need a referral to someone who can help, call or text Fagan, Fagan, and Davis at 847-635-8200. Because having a plan is always better than leaving it to the whims of fate. Tell me a little bit about the problem solving. How was that embedded into your workflow then? And how do you see it having transitioned into your next role?
Yeah, I'm chuckling a little bit because problem solving in bail bonds can often be very interesting. If you were to talk about a collateral that somebody might put up to get themselves out of jail, you might be the owner of a boat that you have to put up for collateral or the owner of a home, or you might be the owner of a tank or something. I don't know, some weird situation where it's just like that's where all your money is locked up and that's what you're using to get yourself out of jail. And so as a bail bondsman, you might become the proud owner of one of those things in order to get somebody out of jail. So point being is, like, often in that line of business, you have to come up with very clever solutions to get paid, essentially.
Okay, someone basically gives you a deed or a title as collateral or just eventual payment. Do you always accept it? Is that just okay? You'll figure it out. In that case, you have a good relationship with a pawn shop, or
Mm-hmm.
or with somebody else who's going to essentially flip it for you and provide you with that liquidity. What do you do in those situations?
I think it goes back. It's kind of a combination of the risk management and problem solving Venn diagram, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I can assess that the risk of um, bailing this person out seems okay, but they only have this car that they can put up, then and all the referrals, the family sounds good, the friends sound good, all the information you're gathering about their work history or their criminal history is telling you that it makes sense, then yeah, you might end up with a car.
What's the most absurd piece of collateral you've ever heard about or witnessed?
I don't know if, like, I know of anything super absurd, but like cars and boats and jewelry. And we once bailed out a con artist, and we spent days going through this garage that they own, that they put up for collateral. And it was just tens and thousands of dollars worth of, like, expensive clothes and jewelry that we had to itemize and figure out what the prices
Doing
were.
that, you're not outsourcing that problem.
No.
That's absurd.
Yeah, I did some weird stuff.
You got into some weird stuff then.
I got into some weird
So
stuff.
that was a con artist. So tell me about that or any other scenario where you did what you felt was a risk assessment, an analysis, made a decision to post bail for someone, and it was possibly the wrong decision.
Oh, that's where things get very interesting. So what are the chances that you're going to not get caught? Pretty low percent, because you go and try and go into hiding or flee the country, you're probably going to get found by a bounty hunter. But it's an expense that a bail bondsman doesn't want to have to pay.
You're paying potentially a bounty hunter to go track that person down.
Yeah.
Back then, you might literally have a Rolodex of names of bounty hunters that are in your network that you call and you
Hmm.
say, I got a gig for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was the conversion rate on that success rate?
Pretty close to 100%.
That is that pro tip number 3?
Yeah, I mean,
That if you try to run, you will be found.
oh, for sure. I mean, you're gonna get found in Thailand in a shack.
Yeah. And that
It's
was 15
just
years ago. L Forget about today where we have far more advanced technology to help assist in tracking someone down.
oh, for sure, you're gonna get caught. It would be pretty you would have to go to a country that would make it hard for, um get to somehow, like, some not great country that it was extradition laws or
Correct.
something where it makes it hard to actually get the person back into the United
And
States.
possibly even the compromise there is quality of life forever thereon.
Yeah. Oh, for the rest of your life. And yeah, I don't know. It
It
happens.
rarely ever works out like some of those movies. And in many of those movies, they are eventually caught. It's not like this thing where you're gonna run and get away and it's hard to introduce logic into this moment of, insanity or emotional heighten. If your bond is what's an average bond? And I know that they range greatly. We're talking in the hundreds or we're talking in the thousands, 10,000s? What are we talking?
I would say that your average bond is somewhere between 50 and $100,000. The reason why I would say that, at least the ones that we were doing, is
You're not talking about being arrested by the Department of Treasury or the State Department. You're talking about typical crimes.
oh, I'm actually more talking about you're a spouse and you throw a plate at your spouse,
Right.
and one of you calls the cops, and guess what? Someone gets arrested. So don't throw a plate at somebody
Right.
because they're going to arrest somebody, and the bond is going to be high because they're going to say basically you wasted our time, and we don't want you to ever do this again.
Domestic issues, battery, assault, theft, these kinds of things, not international drug trafficking.
Yeah, that's like it's the boring. They're the boring crimes that aren't bailing a rock star out of jail type of stuff. They're the bread and butter, really.
Like we said before, they're typically the crimes that you didn't plan out to commit. A DUI or something like that. They happen because
Yeah.
of a series of some poor choices in a matter of moments or just in
Hmm.
that moment, and that's what happens. So then when you do if you're able to have a logical moment of calculating the cost benefit there, you're saying, okay, $50,000, $100,000 versus spending the next 30 years on the lam. What are you going to do? Like, there's ways to get out of it, and it's hard to convince people to always follow and make the right choices, but they're going to get caught. So you've got these bounty hunters in your network, and you know to call them. They go find the person if you have to. How often would you say you've done the assessment, you've bailed someone out, posted bail, and they try to run away? Like, what percentage of times does that happen in your experience?
I would say it's I would say it's very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when it does happen, it's very expensive.
And annoying.
Yeah, and so as soon as you have skipped your first trial date, then there's this I can't remember the exact name of the period, but you get like 185 days in order to have them show back up to court.
Mhm.
Otherwise, the bond is not exonerated, I think is what it's called.
Which means what?
Exoneration means that, like, as the insurance agent or the bail bondsman, you no longer are responsible for the bond. Either are found not guilty, right, and you're set free, bond's exonerated, or unfortunately, you're convicted and you go to jail or you go to prison. Really,
Hmm. So is this a lucrative business?
yeah. I mean, I would say it's as lucrative as any other insurance agency or across all the different types of insurance that we have. It's very rare that we get into. If you have a health insurance, it's very rare that you have a health problem.
Right.
If you have car insurance, it's very rare that you have an accident. One out of 1,000 times that any of those things happen, it's expensive for that agency, but the rest of the times that you're collecting your premiums completely outweigh the times that you have a lemon.
The statistics are favorable.
Yeah, yeah. Unless like you're an insurance agency in you know California and earthquakes and fires are prevalent or something, or you're in New Orleans and floods are prevalent, then you might want to And it's, statistically speaking, isn't as favorable.
It's not, and that could, if not done right, it could crumble your business. And I know a lot of insurance companies have their own insurance policies on the business themselves should events like that happen. It's just like a whole everyone answers the phone.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if it's worth getting into those details, but the bail is essentially insurance. And then you're totally right. There is an insurance company that sits on top of that insurance company, making sure that like things don't completely crumble.
Yeah. Everyone's got to have protection of some sort and liability.
Hmm.
It's a good time to just talk about product. The theme is transferable skills. So now you've addressed a few of these things very nicely. Now we want to kind of get into more product. Do you have a philosophy that surrounds the way that you manage or view product? And
You want to know something funny?
yeah,
I wrote down 3 transferable skills, and you were actually the one that mentioned every single one of them randomly. Empathy and understanding, risk management, and problem solving were the 3 things that I wrote down that I wanted to talk about. How random is that? You brought those up. You can rewatch
I
this.
think you brought up empathy first.
For sure. That was the one that I brought up, but I think risk and problem solving were the 2 things that you mentioned.
I think those things are the stuff that makes it so interesting and curious to outsiders like myself. It's clearly there's a lot of risk. And I think that most people who don't know anything about bail bondsman lifestyle and their work. When you say risk, I can think of so many different things that fall under risk.
Yeah.
So what is most risky to you? Is it your financial risk? Is it your personal risk, safety? I feel like you got a crash course in many elements on the especially soft skills when it comes to problem solving, but also hard skills when it comes to research, analysis, organization. So how did you find yourself then creating a delineation between your personal space life and your professional life within that world of being a bail bondsman, if it was a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week job? And are you super happy to be in a more stable work environment?
If I'm being honest, I've struggled with turning the actual day-to-day work off, and haven't for the longest time had a super clear delineation between my work life and non-work life. I think kind of unintentionally just
Is that a bug or is that a feature?
I think it's a feature. The 24-hour a day, 7 days a week, maybe fortunately and unfortunately has stuck with me to this day. I feel fortunate that I've somehow fallen into product management after maybe even a long career of having seemingly random jobs. I have a job that doesn't feel like a job in product management. So when I wake up every day and I, you know, sit down at the computer and do my trade, it doesn't feel like work. So I'm totally happy to put in the effort for however long it takes on a day-to-day basis to really like solve problems for people.
I think that's what makes people good at their job and makes them have that stamina for the longevity of it too, because you feel deeply committed to the work that you're doing and that your work is important in one way or another. I think you can find real value in a lot of the things that you do if you recognize who you're doing it for. If there's a customer and you can put your
Mm-hmm.
mindset in that you're helping them in some way, you're providing a solution that will benefit their life, maybe their business, and therefore their personal income for their family. There's a lot of ways to find value in what you're doing. And what makes you likely good at your job and many others at theirs is that regardless of what time of day it is or day of week, you're often thinking about your role because you feel passionate about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say some of what I learned from that period of my life is, I guess, how to become a bit more selfless and in pursuit of helping others out, either through, bringing families back together, or today I'm trying to help a homeowner who has a home improvement project and build the home that they want so that they can live where they want, they can love where they live, and work with service professionals that can do really great work so that those pros can put, food on their table. it's an interesting marketplace to work in where, it's multifaceted and you're seeing rewards from both ends of the spectrum.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's noble work because you are helping people in one way or another. It's hard to turn that
Mhm.
off if you care about what you're doing and the people you're doing it for, and that's important. Do you have an approach or a philosophy with how you view or begin a project at early ideation or any phase within its design, development, deployment, implementation, where you have taken your background skills and how you view or approach product management?
Yeah, definitely. I think in my role nowadays as a product leader, I have to think more about product strategy and whether something we're trying to deliver to our customers is something within our capabilities, and weighing out the choice between some new product or feature that we're trying to deliver and whether or not it also creates some level of viability for the business.
Mhm.
The general framework that I work within is trying to find the most acute problem. So going back to the problem solving that we're trying to solve for our customers, understanding whether the timing is right for that and whether we have the resources and capabilities of doing that and delivering that well. I think first and foremost, we should, you know, deliver products that are the best that we can build within our capabilities.
Yeah.
And then coming up with guardrails or principles or tenets or whatever you want to call them that act as a guide for how you want to deliver that service to help you focus so that you aren't just kind of haphazardly, blindly walking through what you want to build for your customers. And then, so I think beyond that is once you have the exact problem that you want to solve, your guardrails on how you want to solve that problem, you spend reasonable amount of time figuring out what that plan is to deliver whatever products, features, and services for your customer over a certain time period that delivers benefits for the customers as well as viability for your business to continue to grow and support, you know, whatever industry that you're in.
This is awesome. Thank you, Jordan, so much for being here. I know it took us a while to get this interview locked down. You are a very busy person. And so I just want to say thank you for being here, sharing your experience, sharing your tips, sharing the pro tips for our audience out there. I think it's been really juicy, really interesting, and certainly expected to be very helpful to people.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. Happy to share my story and share my path.
I'd like to thank Mark Schaefer for being our staff recruiter way back in 2016, who helped us find Jordan, which was the ultimate catalyst for making him today's guest on this show. And also to you, our listeners, for joining us on this episode of Transferable Skills. Remember, if you found value in today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with your friends and network. Your support helps us reach more people who could benefit from these stories. Transferable Skills is produced by Cackle Media and music by Cosmonkey. We'd like to thank today's sponsor, Fagan Davis, whose support has made this podcast possible. For more resources and inspiration on leveraging your skills for a successful career transition, visit our website at www.cacklemedia.com. Follow us on social platforms at Cackle Media for updates and join our community of listeners who are all about embracing change and growth. If you have any questions, feedback, or want to share your own career pivot story, email us at skills@cacklemedia.com. We love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. And remember, the skills you've gained can take you anywhere. Until next time, keep exploring those transferable skills.